animation stalwarts featuring in this session includes Mr. A.K. Madhavan, founder or director, Assemblage Entertainment; Mr. Murtuja Kutianawala, country head, distribution and sales, India, Tuns Entertainment Private Limited; Mr. Ranjit Singh Tony, creative producer, animation director, educator and author; Mr. Suresh Ariat, founder and director, studio E.K. Saurus Productions Private Limited; Mr. Vaibhav Kumaresh, director, Vaibhav Studios; Mr. Manoj Madhavan, editor, broadcast and film production publication. Thank you.
Hello. Where? Hello. Yeah. So, good afternoon to everybody, and a warm welcome to. We have a fantastic and distinguished stalwart panel today. It's a pleasure to have all these animation stalwarts today. So the session that we are going to be talking about is recalibrating Indian animation and how do we take it forward. So. Let's begin with the impact of the coronavirus lockdown, which has been severe, and more so when we look at the implication on the animation and entertainment business. So we kickstart with that, and then we will go back into the past and the future about how can the Indian animation look in the coming years. So I would like to start with Tony. Tony, how do you look at the impact of the animation business, and what do you think has been the impact on the industry as a whole? You've been involved in education as well as animation business also. So please give us your insights.
I think what really was a wake-up call during the pandemic was the immediate shift that a lot of studios and a lot of content creators had to make, because as an art form or as a creative profession, we are very used to working in close proximity with each other. And what the pandemic did was it kind of broke that, I would say, the link. And people had to scramble in order to set up remote workstations. This whole work from home concept that was completely alien to, I think, a lot of us, especially for an art form where there is a continuous requirement for, to and fro. It kind of gave us a jolt. But I think the industry is quite resilient in the fact that the switchover was not that difficult for a lot of studios. In fact, even the larger studios were able to switch over and shift to the remote or now the hybrid work model. In fact, a lot of them are continuing with that hybrid work model because it kind of seems to be working. So I don't think that there has been a very severe downturn. In fact, on the contrary, animation has picked up. You can see a lot of content that is now visible. There's a kind of, excitement in the air about where we are going forward. So I have a very positive outlook towards it. I think it's only going to grow more and more. And the fact that these barriers broke down, one big plus point that happened or advantage that came to us was you could now engage with artists across the world without having to worry about proximity. That are they going to be available for a meet? Are they going to be available for creative brainstorming? Because it became the norm. and everybody kind of geared up into that, and it became like very normal for people to have digital meetings, video conferences, and production flows. Even though they took a little bit of a speed bump, I think most people here will agree with that. But we kind of came out of it not too bad. So yeah, maybe some of the others would like to add to this.
So, Murtaza, how do you look at the whole?
Hey guys, firstly I'd like to thank you guys for having me here, and I cannot agree less with what Tony had to say about this. So of course when it hit and we had to kind of rethink about our pipelines, and of course there was a lot of business that had to be that took a hit, but in that space, it gave us the ability to pause and create a pipeline and depend on technology in ways that we weren't essentially thinking about in the past. So I think that step back really helped us to upgrade ourselves. So that I think that was one great thing that in general, I think all of us would agree that this was one amazing thing that happened for us. In hindsight, I think all of us are working from different parts of the world remotely, and at the same time, this, like you mentioned about the hybrid model, yes, of course, I mean, it's not stopped us from having our morning huddles and discussing ways of adding value to our business in any possible way. So, in other aspects, all we can say is that we've started thinking of the business in a more meaningful way and adding a far larger value to it than what we were doing before. So I think that is a great take home.
Moving over to you, Maddie.
Hi. Afternoon, guys. So, the answer is going to be similar from most of us, right? The pandemic, the COVID did bring in a lot of good in all of us, but I come from an old school. Like, I'm an old man. You can see the graying of my hair, and I come from an old school, and I believe that I love meeting the artists. I love walking the floor, spending time with them, which I'm missing personally. It has done two good things. It has empowered the artists. I mean, we are able to kind of, at a distance, empower a lot of stuff at the end of the artist. And the second thing that has really happened is the technology part. We could scramble, kind of adapt and understand the technology. We were pushed into it. So there's a very old saying, right? Change your thoughts and change your life. So our life changed, but I'm missing the artists on the floor. But good things are happening for all of us in the animation space.
Suresh, pre-COVID, many of the larger animation studios were...
I think if I had to answer the same thing, or...
Yeah, so just a little twist to that.
Okay.
Many of the larger animation studios which were catering to the TV channels and OTT platforms were struggling. And some had multiple shows on various channels and platforms, yet were unable to break even because the margins were thin. So how did you look at the whole?
So I don't know whether I should talk about business side first. We were anxious about the business side, whether we would be able to kind of manage through these times, because we are a comparatively smaller team. We are like 25, 30 people, and having a very niche sort of working space. So, in my experience, what I feel most grateful about because of this pandemic period is that, I discovered something called trust. That, we started trusting people a lot more because of this sort of a moment. In fact, when throughout the pandemic period, people are working from home, we didn't have any way to monitor. We don't have any sort of those computer systems where you would know when the people log in, when they log out, when they go to smoke, when they, you don't have any such systems here. So it was primarily based on trust. And I think the way people contributed during those times from their homes, in the discomfort of their homes, I think they did a phenomenal job. People are working almost every single day without even being asked. So the motivation was something that we felt is coming from both sides. And the trust part also. They were also trusting us as people who are running the studio, and we are also trusting completely the people who are helping us grow the kind of work that we are doing. So that was a great earning out of this pandemic, I would say. And in terms of business wise, we actually were able to stop, look at ourselves, introspect a little bit, and prioritize. I mean, why should I do so many films? I figured out a way to say no to things. There are bigger projects, but it may get us big bucks, but we kind of learn to say, no, this is something that we don't want to take up. So that really happened out of this pandemic time, where we actually prioritize what is important to us, as what is our grain. We were able to understand it much better. And of course, we actually put out all our short films and our content out for the people to consume during this time, and the kind of response that we received for it was tremendous, and that is a huge booster for us. So in all, I only take out the positive. There may be many negatives, but I don't know it. In front of the positives, they just probably look too negligible. Yeah.
Vaibhav, your take on this? You have been doing catering to a lot of advertising clients, right? So this pandemic must have been tough on you, on your business.
Thankfully for us, the time that the lockdown hit us, we had a lot of work in hand, which went pretty smooth. So the initial jhatka, obviously all of us, that jhatka was there for everybody, that there was like a pause of a few months, probably because of the sudden lockdown and everybody adjusting to the new lifestyle of jhadu, pocha, bartan, work, home, everything. So that challenge, I'm sure, hit us all. But it was smooth on the work front, thank God. And like everyone has mentioned, Madhavan mentioned people. Again, Suresh mentioned trust. All of it, like, very, very apt. Like, I just want to add that most of us are all storytellers. We are figuring out a way to tell our stories. So even when this challenge happened, we figured out various ways. Technology people, they figured out technology so that we could stay connected. And many of those positives, we are still following. It also gave us so many good things that we didn't. It's not that pandemic khatam ho gaya, abhi purane tarike se kaam kar rahe hain. Nahi. Jo cheezein wahan mili, there was such good things that we got, we are continuing that. So it was, like Tony ji also mentioned, that globally you could reach out to anybody, because of that technology or because of that common situation the whole planet was in. So I think for us, to be specific, that transition was pretty smooth, despite like no work for certain people or certain kinds of work. We had to figure out how they could contribute virtually. But other than that, it was smooth for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Signature line. Jog ka jhatka. No. You had an advertising.
Okay. Now coming back to we exit from the COVID segment and we look at India and the growth of animation in the Indian market. We have been successful as a destination where for outsourced market, where work comes into India, and you have been involved, Maddie, with setting up Crest and how we all catered to that, and Toons also to a large extent. So how does the Indian animation make that leap to getting into producing original IPs? How do you all look at that? I would like Maddie to take that first, and then Murtuza, and then come to Tony on that.
This is a topic which is very close to my heart, right? The recalibrating was your subject about Indian animation, and it's very key at this point in time. Outsourcing has been going on for a while, And I think India kind of is doing stellar work when it comes to servicing overseas independent producers or even studios for that matter. I think the quality of content that our Indian artists are doing today is impeccable as compared to many other continent. Having said that, there is one thing that I want to leave behind this afternoon in terms of a thought, is the recalibration of Indian animation. I think what is important is, I would personally, I mean, I've reached almost the fag end of my career, but I would probably at this point in time in my life indulge, push people like Suresh and Vaibhav to take on the front stage when it comes to leading India in the animation space. What we really require is to empower these guys with the art of storytelling. Storytelling is key. So there are plenty of stories in India, but the storytelling is what I would invest in. I would push these guys. I would tease these guys. I would indulge these guys. I would make sure that they're exposed to the art of storytelling. It's not about the discussion is not about Indian animation. The discussion is animation from India. That's what the change should be. And you look at the way technology is moving. There was a time when, all you guys, you're so young, many of you didn't see the transition of technology from, most countries, developed countries went through, laptops to desktops to, and then handheld and mobiles. You guys went to mobiles straight away, right? Most of you sitting in this audience. Now, technology is key, but so it's a combination of empowering these guys in terms of the art of storytelling, making sure that we understand the sensibility of not Indian animation, but for example, we non-photorealistic kind of stories or characters. All right, it's the Spider-Verse now. All right, so I think we have the potential, and especially I know for a fact and certainty that there are two gentlemen on my left who should take on this lead and spend time on. And that's one of the things that I spoke to you this afternoon. Is we need to spend time. And I'm going to emphasize this, in Alibag, to create great stories from India. So the recalibration is key, and the focus should be on animation from India at this point in time, and we have the potential here.
Tony, I would like to understand from you, has the animation industry been able to evolve as a mature IP-driven model and with a mature distribution and marketing ecosystem in place?
At least the episodic part. Okay, I would like to break this down into a couple of different segments, and also like to comment a little on what Max just said. But as far as the episodic content is concerned, which is television series, I think there's been quite a lot of maturity that has come in there in terms of now established distribution pipelines. Content creators are able to cater to the demands that are put in terms of the kind of content that is selling. So that's another discussion altogether. But as far as the long format feature aspect is concerned, I think there still is needed. It may sound very naive, but I think there is still a leap of faith that is required, which is not forthcoming. And there are multitude of reasons for that. Commercial reasons, definitely. But it's like this, that show me a success story and I will invest in a feature, right? Versus I want to invest in a feature and make it into a success story. So what's happening today is, unfortunately, we've gone into this mode of animation feature तो इंडिया में चलती नहीं है, इंडिया में एनिमेशन फीचर बनाने वाली किसी को अकल नहीं है, तो हम क्यों पैसा लगाएं, right? Now the fact is that this is a kind of a self-serving system. that if you are going to back projects that essentially, as Max said, storytelling is missing, or the basic component of storytelling is missing, then you're going to land up in a situation that you are in today, where projects that probably have not been very, very well thought out, have seen huge investments, and have fallen by the wayside. Now, sometimes it's also not the fault of the project, it is also the way the project is treated. I remember my guru Ram Mohan ji used to always say this, that animation has always been the Cinderella of the film industry. It's always been given the stepmotherly treatment that it's animation. I mean, recently I heard a statement from somebody about this film Adipurush, where they said that, oh well, the audiences should have been warned that it is an animation film. What does that mean? Animation is a medium. It's a way to tell a story. It's a different format. How does that start affecting the story itself? So this mindset has to change in the people who are behind these, I would say, forces that enable the content to reach out to the masses. That mindset has to change. And I completely agree that, not completely agree, I think I have a slightly divergent viewpoint from what Max is saying. I think Suresh and Vaibhav have been doing a lot of brilliant work in the storytelling space. But then again, it comes back to, if today Suresh says that he's going to make a feature film, right, he's going to face a hurdle that probably what Vaibhav is facing today. Vaibhav is right now in the last leg of his own feature, which is a completely self-funded project. Unheard of. It's a full 100-minute feature that's going to be hopefully released in 2023. We have no idea how we are going to get it out there. Because we know the first thing that people are going to ask us is animation. कौन सी animation film India में बनी है और जो success हो गई है? That is the argument that I'm getting into. I'm not getting into an argument about is the content good, is it nice, does it look good, can we make a market for it, can we make a space for it, can we push it out and really turn things around? We are not even getting into that discussion. So the mindset change is, I think, required. I don't think it's about Indian artists evolving. As Max said, again, I couldn't agree more. We have some of the most brilliant artists on the planet sitting in this country. The reason why we are pushing everything towards, let's say, the service sector, everything towards outsourcing, is because that's where the money is, right? I have a huge problem with the way this entire skill development concept has also been pushed down the throat of the animation industry, because I do not see fundamental development happening anywhere in that entire program. All we are talking about is creating technicians. We've got enough of them. Where are the thinkers? Where are the storytellers? Where are the guys who are going to think up of concepts and take the stories, as what Max says, India's got enough stories. Where are we training them under the skill development concept to say, develop stories? That is like what you're doing is you're creating typists and then expecting them to write letters. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You got to understand the language, you got to understand grammar, you got to understand the basics, and then you can start thinking about, comprehension, and you start thinking about essay writing. A typewriter doesn't make you a writer. And what we are doing, unfortunately, somebody has to say this, and I'm unfortunately always the guy who keeps saying it. I've been saying it for the last so many years. We have to focus on the fundamentals in any program that we bring in and push forward.
I have just one question for Murtuza. Murtuza, Toons has been investing in original IPs. So how successful have you all been in monetizing the movies,
Thanks, Manoj. So I'm just going to add to, all the amazing things that the panelists mentioned. Everyone, every husband needs a wife, every panelist needs a moderator, every buyer needs a seller. I think every creator also needs a businessman, right? And I think what has happened with Toons especially our intent has been very collaborative. Always. So we've always tried to ensure that there should be a pipeline for people to pitch to us and reach out to us from other parts of the country is the only way to make this ecosystem flourish. Of course, creators and artists, they don't have a business sensibility, and that's where we become privileged people to be able to help. But look at what Shark Tank India did. You know, like it made so many people from remote areas come up with businesses that they never thought of. If there was this ability of an artist to think that my story could be told and it could reach millions and millions of people through a business component added to it, I think original IPs will come out from places where they never did, and I think that's what our sensibility is, that we want to listen to people, listen to their stories. I mean, we've all been telling stories, we've been successful in telling stories, but what about the stories that don't reach the screen eventually? I think that's the goal. You know, that's probably, we want to be approached, we want to hear your pitch, we want to, you know, see how we can add value to it. And of course, I mean, to answer your question, it's never about just getting your concept greenlit by a broadcaster. I think the idea is to be able to see the business component in it, regardless of whether it is going to be funded or not. I think we need to start looking at your story like an asset, and then think about a business that can make that story be told in the most interesting way. It need not be just a television network at all times. Imagine when the metaverse possibilities came to us through COVID, and NFTs dropped. I mean, maybe it's not the most exciting thing right now, but it is. But the last 2 years, it made a lot of money to a lot of people. And I think there are such possibilities with multiple OTT platforms and distribution models and YouTube networks and brands coming into the components. I think things have opened up, and we need to start thinking in a non-traditional way when it comes to coming up with these ideas.
Coming to Suresh. Suresh, I read about that brilliant script that you wrote about your experience of the ride from Alway Station to the airport, and how brilliantly it was illustrated in the art form. So, storytelling, how critical is that in the entire process?
See, I think I'm just also going to add to what Muthu said. You know, when you look at business alone, it is a problem, because business without a vision is a bigger issue. I mean, business for money is the worst thing. I mean, that's which cannot be a long-standing entity, according to me. Vision is most important. Storytelling is part of the vision only. One of the debacles that are happening in Bollywood right now is that they're looking at the business part. Like, they think the audience is manipulatable. We will give them what they need. We know what they need. It's like you're absolutely taking the audience for like too dumb. You know, they're too dumb. So we will make whatever remakes or whatever, put the right sort of star cast, put the right sort of musicians. It will work. But it is very true that it's not working with the audience, right? It's not working. And suddenly at RRR, I'm not patronizing RRR, but it's worked with people. Or a KGF has worked with people, because it's innovative, it is fresh. It's a fresh vision. Business part comes, you need like-minded people, like Murtuza said. You need somebody who understands the worth of that vision to put in the money and back them up completely. That is essential. But in terms of, for it to change, innovation is the key, actually. And I feel, yes, we are able to tell stories. We have made Indian stories from India, like Madhavan said, popular internationally. We have won the kind of prestigious awards that we can bring to India. All those things we have done. But we don't have the trust of the people who can put in the money to whether that will work or not, because they want, it's like in advertising, we have a very regular thing. People always come and say, we want something very unique, but can you show a reference? So they want to always see a reference, but when you repeat a reference, it will never be successful. And that's what is happening in Bollywood. They know this is a success formula that's worked, do multiple permutation combinations of that and try and fool the people. But people are not fools. They just don't accept crap anymore. Because they also see OTT. They are seeing good content coming from there. So, the stagnant thinking of the old traditional way of churning out film is not working anymore. So, what ideally for us to change the scenario in animation, like Indian storytelling, animation storytelling to come is, according to me, one of the biggest key that's missing is that we have the skill, like, Madhavan said, we have so many, 90% of Indian animation is skill based. It's all the outsourced work happening. Great force. It's some years back when I went to Bangalore for a convention and I spoke to a company that has 2,000 animation artists from India working. And one of the creative directors over there is from the US, and I asked him, why don't you invest some of your people to work with us? Let them work with us. We will come up, we will not charge for our film idea. We will not charge for direction. Let them work with us. So let's produce something world class with your force and show the world that, this is the collaboration that is entirely Indian. They very clearly told me, he told me very clearly, it was a side talk. He said, that is not our agenda in India. We want them to only do work for us. So when that requires a change in the way we think. If we could work with companies where they also invest with their people in our ideas, we will also invest in our ideas without charging. So we create something collaborative, and that can actually go into the market and impress upon people. And we will know a teaser is good enough for you to know how people like it. Our film Fisherwoman Tuk Tuk has got 2.5 crores of views organically, no pushing, no seeding, nothing. So there is an audience, right?
Right.
So, it is something that we need to test out with the right sort of combination.
Okay. Vaibhav, I was at the FICCI conference a couple of weeks back, and I heard the I&B secretary, Mr. Apurva, mention that they're setting up the AVCG Council, which is going to be 48% owned by the Ministry of Information and Broadcast and 26% share each to CII and FICCI. So how hopeful are you that development could spur the growth of animation? Do you see that happening?
Okay, before answering that query, I just wanted to share that there is a large animation industry in India, but I don't consider that the Indian animation industry. There's a big difference. It just physically happens to be here and it earns money, but the other aspects that we touched upon of storytelling,
Right.
or like even Madhavan mentioned, Indian storytellers and their telling, it doesn't touch upon that at all. It's a large shop that caters to making money. That's the first priority. If I may put that very bluntly, that's the fact. Suresh also told that little incident, which makes it very clear. It's why are you in the industry? Are you there to make films or to tell stories? Or are you there to make money? These are two options we all will face at every stage. Which option do you give first priority is what will define your journey ahead. I think last 2 decades we've given the first priority to making money, and we are still very clear on that priority. As a result, the second priority of telling stories, I feel, has suffered. We've not given enough focus to that, and that's the most tough thing to do. The other interesting thing that we are fascinated with, because we are interacting with a global industry, we are aiming to entertain a global audience. What we are failing to do is to entertain our local audience first. On that front, I have huge respect for the Indian live action industry, film, cinema industry, because whether it's like 100 plus years of Indian films, live action films, it has such variety. Okay, it may have resorted to formula many times, but the trial and error, we have such a huge market, the largest market in the world, and we have a huge diaspora that is consuming our own films. So by the Indian cinema, I mean all regional films. In the last 2-3 years, thanks to the OTT development.
Permit me to ask you a question, if I can just interrupt you. The fact that you mentioned that we have a large diaspora, but the fact that many of the animation films, the Indian animation films made by some of the studios, have not done well at the box office.
Right. I'm not even coming to the animation sector now. I'm saying that for me, the inspiring thing is the live action film industry. Why? Because we have so much variety. Whether it's a Malayalam film or a Marathi film or a Hindi film, Telugu film, doesn't matter anymore. Whether it's a Korean, Japanese, Iranian, French film, also doesn't matter anymore. The fresh stories that local storytellers bring to their films is being appreciated. My point is, we have not invested enough as a country in that. Coming back to your question, I still feel that the government is aiming at bringing in revenue. That is still priority one. The fact that Films Division, Children's Film Society of India, all have been, merged into one entity is because, again, it's the financial aspect of it, that maybe multiple bodies making losses make it one. In that, there were some, like CFSI and Films Division used to fund local content, used to have every annual funds to do that. So I'm hoping that that is retained. So coming back to that storytelling angle that we all discussed, if the thrust is to encourage indigenous storytellers, now our country itself is so cosmopolitan. Indigenous does not mean just sticking to our cultural roots. Our cultural roots are itself so diverse. So as a local filmmaker, storyteller, as long as I am telling my own story, that's good enough. And if I'm encouraged to do that, like we all mentioned, there's no dearth of creative talent. We will come up with amazing content for our own audience. That is my personal take. I want to entertain our audience in India first. If the global audience loves it, that's a bonus for me.
Thank you.
I don't know how many of you remember, Max will remember because he's mentioned 3-4 times that he's old. You remember the Films Division featurettes that used to come in before a film screening? A Hindi film or an English film, you walk in, and you sit down in the auditorium, and there would be these social service films that would come in, which were made by Films Division, the cartoon film unit that was set up under the aegis of the government of India. And I think Pandit Nehru at that time had initiated this. Claire Weeks had come down from Disney and trained artists over here. Why don't we have that today? We've got multiplexes now, multiple screens. Imagine the amount of content that you can get out there. You've got enough social issues on which we can talk about. So I don't think it's about can we do it or not. The will has to come in from the people who can enable it. So if you really want to get messages out there, animation is the easiest and the best way to do it, because you have so much of flexibility. You can do anything with it. It's a medium where there are no constraints. So I do not agree with anyone who turns around and says that, well, we don't have the via media, or we don't have the avenues to get the message out there. It's going to be a costly proposition. Was it a costly proposition when Films Division was actually screening these short films? Development in India, development in the farm sector, development in agriculture, development in electrification. These are all topics that were, put across to the audience via documentaries. And then, yes, you also had those very famous, animation snippets like Ek or Anek. I don't know how many of you have seen that. If you haven't, please go see it. made by stalwarts of the animation industry at that point in time. People who started it, Bhimsen ji, Ram Mohan ji, Samant. These are people who actually were spearheading these efforts. So why can it not be done again today? So I agree with Weber when he says that, the entire focus is now on revenue. And what that is doing is that even policies that are being made, if you study the policy papers, sometimes it's really heartbreaking to see that there is so much of focus that is put on the VFX sector. There is so much of focus that is put in on the gaming sector. There is so much of focus that is put in on skill development. But there is zero focus put in on giving impetus to storytellers. That if you make a film in animation in India, what are you going to get by way of some incentive so that it encourages more people to jump into that? And this is something that we really need to address. And policymakers need to address this. People who are advising policymakers also need to address this.
I would now like to throw open the floor to the audience to make it a more interactive session. So anybody from the audience, do you all have any questions for the panelists? So I think we have a mature audience and they understand the business model. So fair enough. Coming to skilled manpower, is that something which is of a major concern? Maddie, what do you think about that?
As usual, I think each one of us said we will answer your question later. But first, some of the thoughts emerge since the discussions is happening. I think I opened up this afternoon by saying that to the left of me there are two gentlemen who needs to be empowered. I don't know how many of you recall this. So if you really look at the world in terms of entertainment, India is always focused on star-eyed. We go behind stars. We go behind directors. We have never empowered writers. If we have to recalibrate, and that's part of the skill thing, we need to invest in writers. And that is where, as I said, towards the fag end of my career, I now want to indulge, tease, empower, nurture, encourage people like Vaibhav and Suresh to, and I'm happy to invest into the writing skills. So coming to the skills in terms of production capability, I think India can talk about almost every Oscar that the world cinema wins. There are Indian artists giving great production quality. So there's skill in production levels. If you look at, just to give you a crude example, Simpsons. I know how many of you have seen it. The writers are the highest paid on that show. So it is important that we go less on stars and directors, but spend more, make these guys stars. I mean, the writers, the stars, but that is more important. Production-related skills, I think India is at par with the global levels. There's always an opportunity to learn. I would like to summarize: empower writers, make animation from India, not focus on Indian animation, and start living with technology, because technology is going to play a significant role even for the writers to think differently.
Coming to Suresh, animation costs are pretty high. So is securing finance from private investors and bank a challenging prospect for?
And we never tried that. So.
Oh, you have never tried that. What about you, Weber? Would you like to shed some light on that? Have you ever tried to go that route?
See, we have tried to approach whoever could financially support.
Right.
The fact is that as statistics are heavily stacked against us,
Right.
as long format storytellers in India, that I think we have brought ourselves to that situation.
A different model of
Coming to you, Murtaza, does Toons have any plans to collaborate with studios like Vaibhav or Suresh's studio and do a kind of a joint collaboration on any movies?
I'm sure there will be, of course, that possibility arise. I'm sure that, and I mean, we've been very collaborative in our approach at all times. So, yes, of course. I mean, that will be a definite avenue to consider if we are aligned in some thought process. And even in general sense, I think we just have to be collaborative for this to really do well. I mean,
into this, let's see if we can make a change from the inside, right? So then I got involved very actively in the education space. And let me tell you this, that it's a misnomer that education has to be expensive. I feel honestly, and I believe in my brother from another mother, Vivek Ram, that education has to be free. It has to be a fundamental right for everybody, and it has to be free. And it can be free. Because we have been working this initiative in Bangalore called Vanar Sena School. It's a free school. Not a single penny is charged by either the trainers, who are all industry veterans, industry experts, and not a single penny is charged from the student. There is only one rule, and that one rule is, if we are going to invest our time as experienced people giving you knowledge, sharing our knowledge with you, then you have to come in with 100% commitment. All right? Nothing else. So, from the structured way that we are looking at things, I blame the industry also for the way our education model has turned up. So, this has to be a shared blame. You can't look at somebody who's running a business of training and completely run him into the ground saying, you are spoiling the system. No. They are providing what the industry is asking for. All right, let's be clear about that. So the day the industry is able to produce stories that have an appeal, that get a liking, I would be very surprised if these same schools don't start, courses which talk about storytelling, which talk about screenplays, which talk about, script writing. The reason they don't do it today is because ये सीख के कहाँ नौकरी मिलेगी? आज उसको फोटोशॉप सिखा दूँ तो उसको पेंटर की नौकरी मिल जाएगी, उसको मैं मैच मूविंग सिखा दूँ तो रोटोस्कोप आर्टिस्ट बन जाएगा, because that is what the industry is asking for.
Right.
So this has to be a shared blame, and if this overall has to happen, it has to happen with a concerted effort from both sides.
Right.
The education side, the training, I don't call it the education side, I call it the training side, and the actual practicing industry. We have to get together and we have to take a hard look, where do we want our industry to go 5 years from now or 10 years from now? And sadly, I've been saying this for the last 20 years. So you can imagine the amount of catch up we've got to do.
Sure. So on a concluding note, I would like a 30-second response from each of the panelists. Animation industry in India 10 years from today, starting with you, Vaibhav.
Hopefully more of our own stories and an amazing audience that consumes mature content, like amazing audience meaning adult audience that is lapping up animation created in India by Indian storytellers.
Suresh.
I just hope that we come up with something equivalent to like how anime and manga is for Japan. If we can have, I'm not saying that we should do something like that. There is a huge confusion. There are a lot of people who in India who draw anime in that style. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the storytelling. Inherently, their own stories. If we can, like how Japanese told their stories, if we can tell our stories, that will be the future, and I'm sure that will be the future. There is no doubt about it.
Starting today for the next 10 years, I'm willing to put my money on Suresh, Vaibhav and Kirit.
I think if technology can really make animation more accessible and get make it a lot more faster for us to actually churn out that kind of content which is aspirational, I think that would be great to see 10 years from now.
Tony, your final concluding comments?
I don't have a 10-year vision for this. I just want to see the next step. And I think the next step is only looking positive. So, yes, there'll be people who may not believe in us. Yes, there may be people who may find it's not a winning proposition for them. That's their outlook. As storytellers, as people who create content, we are confident that we are going to do whatever it takes to change the way content is sent out there and to change the kind of content that's going out there. So that's a commitment that we are making.
Fantastic. So what's the content that we are playing now? We have a brief animation clip which we'll be playing now.
Yeah, this is just a small 2-minute sizzle reel that we've got for Weber Studios, just in case you people don't know the kind of work that is happening here. Incidentally, Weber Studios is the only Indian animation studio that has an international Emmy nomination in its repertoire. Okay? For a series that was developed by Weber called Lumput. If you haven't seen it, watch it on Cartoon Network. It is now in its 4th season. So it's not about that, can we make content and can we make it successfully? Yes, we can. Faith.
Thank you. I would request the speakers to accept a small memento in appreciation of your participation. This is a Go Green initiative. I'll give you a bag. Thank you so much for taking the time. This is a Go Green. I'll give you a bag. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vaibhav, for your time. Go Green. I'll give you a bag for this. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bag. बस एक वो चला गया. Bag ले आना.
Thank you, all of you, for being here. It is lovely to kind of share our thoughts. Thank you, Manoj, for having us here.
Thank you.
Absolutely lovely.
Thank you. Thank you to all the speakers for a fantastic session. I would like the audience to clap for the panelists, please. Thank you. That was a very engaging session.